So I guess we can talk a little bit about the photos now too.
Yeah, sure.
So Barbara Morgan, this book that we've kind of been chatting around and about, I think she made these pictures over a course of 5 years working with Martha Graham from like 1935 to 1940 roughly,
Yes,
and then she published a book.
yeah. This was because I don't I have I have my own copy and it was autographed, as you can see by Martha Graham from me.
Cool.
So it's really good. So I'm really I treasure it a lot, but also larger than that, this is a really significant book of dance photography, and it's very, very well known, particularly because it captures this iconic figure, and it captures it, I think, at a time and an era that's so appropriate too.
Yeah,
It's not it doesn't warp the integrity of the piece. It really captures just even in the stills, it captures like the theater that Martha was so good at.
yeah, absolutely. And I've kind of been looking at them, and I think something that's super interesting is the fact that all of the backgrounds are pretty much the same in the
Yeah,
pictures. It's kind of the gray neutral, and the people, for me at least, it really makes the figures pop out. That there's kind of this very dramatic focus on the shapes and the choreography and the dancers who are in the images. And
And
I
that,
think
and that to me, Cassie, that's so reflective of Martha and her work, though. I mean,
yeah,
she's very much about shapes and the integrity and the dramatic subtext and having things in bold relief on stage. When
absolutely,
dances came out, it wasn't just an arbitrary, moment. I mean, there was something, there was a specific task they were assigned to do in this
yeah,
dramatic line. And so I think that's what probably the advantage of Barbara Morgan following her for this period of time. She was able to see that and say, wait a minute, it's not about seeing a lot of vast movement, which is more, I
right.
think, au courant to what we see now in dance photography. Right now, it's about the moments, the quality, the edges, the relationships and stuff, which I think comes out really clear in these works.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost, sculptural kind of in the way that the people are
Exactly.
frozen. And it's
Absolutely.
so I think it's pretty amazing in the one photo that's at the Loeb with the trio where everybody is kind of jumping and it's so perfectly
Right.
frozen. Like as a photographer too, I'm amazed kind of at the technical feat, especially on film, of being able
Right.
to catch that moment.
Right. Because you don't have the luxury of having one of our cameras where you can do it electronically and then scroll
Yeah.
and pick out the shot. It's like, okay, hit or miss, and you really don't
Yeah.
know until it's developed.
Yeah,
Until the
which is
film is developed.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess that's something. Have you had an experience kind of like this of being photographed, and how does it? I imagine this is kind of more staged than she came in and photographed a
Right,
live
exactly.
performance kind of
And
thing.
because you have to be because you're trying to catch certain moments. I think
Right.
probably again because I'm 150 years old, so I when I was doing my photo shoots with the company, it was pretty much along those lines.
Right.
Uh, 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 we'd have Jack Anderson come in or Martha Swope, and these were like the big icons of dance photography at that time,
Yeah.
and they would observe the works, they would observe moments and say, okay, let's try this. And they would do all they could to recreate the moment so that they could capture it on film. It
Right.
wasn't do this and I'll catch it. It was like, in order for me to catch it, you must do this.
Right.
And so that whole process was just it was excruciating because it meant a lot of repetition,
Yeah.
a lot,
Absolutely.
and we always said that photo shoots were the hardest things to do because your body was constantly kind of putting in this motion of repetitive, action.
Right.
But that was kind of the way the artists work. You come in, there'll be a moment. She'd say, "Well, do something from the piece," and you do it, and wait, this moment we want to capture that, and then you go and she'd try to catch it, and it's interesting. Like I think this is not to, this is a little shameful here, but I was thinking about this brochure, this old brochure we had, um, and it was an Appalachian thing, and then like I had to do this jump,
Oh
you
wow.
know, it was, and it just, the amount of times that we had to go over,
Yeah.
it's okay, and then she then developed the film, and then you capture. But going back to the Barbara Morgan works, I'm sure, like in the jump from Celebration, where the three women are suspended in the air,
Yeah.
that was several takes, I'm sure, to try
Oh,
to get
for
that
sure.
moment. And then probably being the intuitive woman that she was, she probably knew when she probably caught it, and
Yeah.
then we go from there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's such, and I guess that's a benefit too of kind of working over time that you could
Yeah,
go and sit and watch the works in its entirety and, maybe make notes on this is a shape that's interesting or this is a
right,
moment in the piece that would be feasible to capture, kind of. working in that way and then going back and saying, here's what I've noticed, and
Right. Right.
collaborating with both, Martha Graham herself and the dancers who were doing everything.
But also, isn't it interesting though that this? I don't think we have the level of appreciation now because everything is electronic. But
Right.
if you go back to what this must have been like, you really applaud Barbara's intuition about things, because
Oh,
it was really clear she had to have that in order to be able to capture these images so succinctly.
yeah, and there's kind of, that moment of anticipation, because even though it seems so small to us, the moment between clicking a shutter on a camera and, someone moving is
Yeah.
so minuscule, but it makes the entire difference. That,
Yeah.
like, it could be 1 second too late, and it's the
Right.
most frustrating thing ever, that you're like, oh no, someone's foot isn't pointed exactly
Right.
the right way, or the arms aren't all in unison, or just, slightly like too blurry or something like that. So
The amount of pictures she must have taken just to get
yeah,
this. I can't even imagine how many shots she's had in her line to be
yeah.
able to select these out of it.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, and it's, to see how well, technically, I think too, they're really well lit, and they're,
Right.
people's faces, and the level of detail is pretty incredible for that kind of thing.
Right.
That you have to wonder, how long did it take for that kind of practice to come into play.
Well, there's a couple shots like these shots here from front here,
Yeah,
that you see. Obviously, I don't know how it's coming with Zoom, but just the look at this one right here. Just you're getting a real sense of the piece, because the set piece is this, kind of rail fence and these long ropes that kind of represent like the horizon and railroads, and then you see
right.
Martha, the city's nestled there. And I just think it's so incredible, just the lighting and the way it captures the top of the kick and whatnot. And that, that's consistent with so many of the other pictures in the works as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like the timing and thinking kind of about the kick too, in the same way that that's
Right.
so iconic. And I think it's one of the first photos when I think of Martha Graham and I think
Right.
of her choreography. I think of that photo by Barbara Morgan, and kind of that the same way that it's the drama of the image is so kind of evident.
Yeah. She, that was what, she knew that was a rather notorious photo because, and then
Yeah,
because she'd seen, and a lot of times when you see people imitating Graham, they'll do this and they'll do the
yeah,
kick because they're familiar with that pose. But she was so emphatic of just saying that I never touched my head. She was very, no, it was, but she came as close to that moment as possible, and
right.
Barbara caught it. And I guess there's a difference between having the hand rest on it or coming to a moment where that tension is held, where we get to that point.
Yeah,
There's a physical difference in your body.
yeah,
So in the kick, when you see that shape, it's uh, a lot more muscular than just the sweeping movement of the dress.
yeah,
The torso is very contained. All those angles really take a lot of muscle control to do.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and I love that dress. And again, I'm such a sap. I have a picture of this in my family room that she's actually autographed as well. So I have the kick there and I have the book here. It's
Yeah,
really great to see that and to look at that occasion.
yeah. Yeah, to have that kind of, and it's fun to kind of see, knowing some of what we've talked in class and learned about, kind of the importance of gesture, and kind of,
Yeah,
having more emphasis on shape than perfection. I feel like is something that I kind of took away from your classes, is, it's about the expression of, the moment or the mood that's supposed to be, as opposed to, worrying about saying, is this the perfect, either I'm in time exactly, or, kind of
right.
being so caught up in doing it exactly right that you kind of miss the energy of it.
She would always say this, and it's a tool that even I think the company does now. Is she said you should always be talking to yourself, like, why did I come in the room? Every gesture is so you're not saying it verbally, but there's
Right.
always this subtext going on. So nothing was arbitrary, and even in these shapes here, even though they're again they're very poetic and all like that, I guarantee you that for all of the people who were filmed, they had to go to that place where there were really vital and authentic connections.
Right.
And gestures had to come from a very real place because you wouldn't have been able to capture it. It would have looked just like, just two people moving rather than some real interaction. And that's what I think is captured in the works as well. When you see, and the dramatic lighting and all of that, it draws that home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the I think in some of the pieces, and I'm thinking of the one with Martha Graham and Merce Cunningham, the kind of, it
Yeah.
looks like there's a conversation going on in the,
Yeah, and it's particularly in that piece. This is from Letter to the World.
Yeah.
And this is this is a line from the Emily Dixon. I think it's March Come In. But anyway, this has become, Merce Cunningham developed this jump. This is called the March jump.
Okay.
And that jump was actually done. This jump with both legs kind of in this kind of parallel attitude was replicated in a number of her works. Clytemnestra, it would be something you do in class to practice, but this is the image that it came from that inspired it to become part of the technique.
Wow.
And again, I think it's important to remember too, and Cassie, we talked about this, is that, Martha developed the technique for her repertoire.
Yeah.
She wanted to have a medium to be able to train the dancers to do her work. And so a lot of times, when you do things in class, you'll actually see the correlation in the choreography. Tilt, as you see tilts a lot, you practice those things because the idea was that she wanted to have her dancers capable of being able to do her work. But in the process, she developed a language that was able to train dancers to dance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's something that's really cool is kind of the translation. And, I think there are works in this book that I've done pieces of in class that we've kind of done across the floor as
right.
It translates so easily from, warm-up exercises to something that you go, oh, okay, this is an actual excerpt of a piece.
Were you, I remember, we did El Penitente, we did the festive dance, and I'm trying to, let me just pull that out real quick. Because, this the festive dance, this one right here with these gestures of the three dances here. We've done excerpts for that dance in class, with the little powder shot jump from side to side with the hands, stuff like that. So that's where it came from. But again, that's again one of the beauties of studying the technique is that you can, when you get a chance to look at the rep, you understand, okay, this is where it's leading or this is where it came from.
Yeah.
And that's why particularly, because you also took grand rep too.
I didn't. I hoped to do it this
okay.
spring and then didn't end up doing
it. Okay. But I know in classes though, even not that weren't grand rep, we would often include little snippets from the rep.
Yeah.
And then again, just so that people could understand that this didn't happen in a vacuum.
Right.
But something like this, like the festive dance, which I just showed you, it really shows where that was really important. But also I would imagine that I would dare say that probably Barbara Morgan also watched a lot of classes. So she could see the physicality of the movement, that went to the dance too. So because this is again, the photographer is so educated, in terms of approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like, Martha Graham wrote an introduction for the book too. So it's clearly there was some dialogue going on and kind of the idea. There's a quote that I really liked at the beginning was the only record of a dancer's art lies in the other arts. And kind of Martha acknowledging that, there has to be some sort of legacy. And it exists in the people who dance her choreography and have been a part of the repertoire, but also kind of in these other art forms. And, thinking about, there are videos of her actually dancing in, full records, but it's kind of an interesting way to think about photography, both as its own art form and kind of the images existing on their own as, beautiful to appreciate the shapes and the composition and the lighting, but also it kind of becomes this amazing record of someone who knows Martha Graham's repertoire so well and can interpret it and kind of compile a legacy for her in some way.
Something that's also nice about the Barbara Morgan works as well is that if you have a video, if you have an old video of Martha moving, it's I think a lot less poetic and striking than the still images.
Yeah.
There's a vitality that you see and that you won't see in a 1940s, 1930s video. It's just because of the quality of it and everything is missing. You're looking at something that you really, because it's so unclear and in comparison with high definition that we have now, it loses so much. Whereas I think in these still images, you really get a lot more of the potency of the movement.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's, I've been watching a couple kind of in research for working on these images of the, American frontier and everything that you can find online. And they're amazing that in technical existence that they're kind of, the music is kind of plinky sounding and not great audio. And they move really kind of weirdly fast looking. And you're like, this doesn't do justice to the images or to the work itself.
And it doesn't lend itself well, I think, to approaching the 21st century, they're like, well, why are we looking at this? They can't. Whereas I do think that the Barbara Morgan was kind of help bridge that a little bit more, because you can clearly see there's a shape, there's substance, there's connection, there's
Yeah.
clarity that you won't get when you look at a video that's modal and sound and and a questionable soundtrack to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of intentional too, the pieces that are the moments that are chosen to be photographed and things, they have some sort of significance or like emotional weight to them.
Right.
And it's kind of, in again, using the word collaboration, the way that, Martha Graham was thinking about art and Barbara Morgan was that they were all kind of at this forefront of modern art and kind of making their own language for what they were doing, whether it was their choreography or, Barbara Morgan was early kind of modern photographer who moved from very documentary stuff to later kind of abstract work. And some of it shows up in this, that there's, work with triple exposure kind of going on where there's one dancer, but you see her multiple times and kind of, it didn't exist in a vacuum, I don't think, for any of them. Kind of modern art was going on that, you worked with other artists, you worked with set designers, everybody was kind of in this moment of their own kind of forging a new path and a new vocabulary, but also not doing it on their own and kind of in dialogue with each other, which I think is so cool kind of to look back on.
Amazing, Cassie. I mean, you think about it. I mean, Louis Horst was her resident composer, and he did the music to El Penitente.
Yeah.
They worked together for years. But she also worked with Aaron Copland. Who he got the Pulitzer Prize for his score to Appalachian Spring for Martha. And the original title of the ballet was Ballet for Martha. So these world-class composers were writing scores. They would get together. She worked with Isamu Noguchi, the Japanese American sculptor, to create these sets. You think it's mind-boggling. And then we didn't have the ultra resources of financial backing. I mean, people were excited about the beauty of just doing art together. And that superseded just all the financial gain that they deserve, but probably weren't able to get.
Yeah.
I also just think that there was something that Barbara must have had a great sense of the notion of sculpture. I look at these pictures, like for instance here of Eric Hawkins from El Penitente.
Yeah.
And I mean, just the sculpture of the body and all of that is just remarkable.
It's amazing.
And unfortunately, because it's so clear, this was the goal. And when I would rehearse the same role, that image would always come in my mind. You got to get your head up, because this was what she remembered, and this was kind of the gold standard.
Right.
Which is good and bad. I mean, in a sense, it's really hard to absolutely capture that. But it's good to know that that Barbara was so great at capturing it that it would be a point of reference we could go to when we were learning things as well.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So you danced that role that was in.
Yeah, I was able, and again, she would always go back when the solo. She'd go back to Eric's, and rightfully so. I mean, my gosh, these are amazing images.
Yeah.
I have a very different physique than Eric Hawkins, but at least we were able to have a point of reference.
Yeah.
And that goes with some other, like the hoop dance here. This figure right here, that Martha in the hoop with the hoop overhead.
Yeah.
All of the women who've done that role would refer to this image, because it's so clear, and you'll see it consistently. If you ever see the ballet, you'll recognize that moment.
Yeah.
It was so captured, but even the articulation of that flexed inverted foot,
yeah,
all back, all of the dancers aim for that when they're doing, which is a great thing to have.
Yeah.
And I think it's more accurate than you look again at the old videos.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's almost kind of like a diagram kind of, body study kind of thing that you can map out. And I'm thinking of that photo that you just showed too, even the way that, it's timed and the way it's posed, that you can see Martha's foot kind of separate from her arms. And it helps you kind of understand placement in a way that you might not actively think about the first time you are dancing, because it's so momentary, but kind of having it to pull back or to reference later is such a neat kind of tool that it can become.
And the other thing, I just want to say this one thing. I know I'm kind of going on, but going back to this again, what you notice, though, again, it's not too much clear, is there's movement in this hoop, in the fabric.
Yes.
So it's like she's just standing there. I mean, she had to move into that shape, and then Barbara had to catch it. So because there's movement in the fabric there, which again, really, is impressive when you think that, again, you don't have the luxury of an electronic camera.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's really great.
Yeah, and the fabric in general is just amazing. Like, I'm thinking of Lamentation, and the photos of Lamentation in here are so you know, it's the use of fabric is so specific to the pieces, but it's also so well captured in these images that you can kind of, like you were saying, the movement, you almost don't think about it right away that it seems frozen in time, but that something had to be moving and something had to be happening for it to be in those places.
You look at some. I mean, this is. I think this was. Were these the three women you were talking about suspended in air?
Yes, yeah, that's
Yeah.
one of the ones we have that print in the Loeb's collection, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, it's a great one to. It's a great one to go look at because you got this one moment, and the thing that's great. I don't know if you can't really pick it up, but their facial expressions. It's not like
Yeah,
it's just so they capture the moment, the top of the jump. Everything is placed and still and articulate. Their feet are pointed. It's not this excess energy, except there's just a moment where they're suspended and they're all in the same energy level there.
right.
It's really, really beautiful, And again, with the black and white, you see the dramatic shadowings of it and everything. It's great. And there's other jumps in it. Well, this is quartet and celebration. And this is a piece that came back in the repertory while I was in. We'd
Oh,
have
cool.
celebration came into the rep while I was in the company,
Uh-huh.
and originally it was all women as it was here, but
Yeah,
then there became men, when we're men version with men as well,
yeah.
you know. So it's all very very athletic, a lot of jumps, incessant jumps, which is so something that Barbara caught in these photographs.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so many of them look like kind of like people are floating because there's
Yeah,
no, spatial kind of, some of them have stage ground to them, but other ones it's just,
you just
figure
see
and then
in
gray and it's,
place. And that is the forerunner, I think, of where dance photography is now, where
yeah,
so much of it is about the movement of it, and
yeah,
even and rather than seeing a figure perfectly situated in space, it's just the athleticism and the inertia, the movement is what you really try to go for,
yeah,
rather than
definitely.
something that's specific to a piece. It's more about the movement in the piece.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
a whole different mindset now.
Yeah,
But again, it makes you appreciate these works, so much. And also, to Cassie, is that um, she was also wanted to, because gesture was so important for her.
yeah,
She also wanted to make sure, Martha always wanted to make sure that there were images that would have an immediate association in people's mind. Like there's, for instance, in the crucifixion section of El Penitente, here when you see, hold on just a second, um, when you see the Christ figure in that shape there, kind of slumped over, and because that's kind of a replication of many images you see in a lot of photographies of the crucifixion with Christ being slumped
yeah,
over like that. She wanted to make sure there was an image like that would be so iconic that people immediately associate what was going on, even
yeah,
if she was in a place where they didn't even speak the language. They could look at that and say, "Oh my gosh, this is what it is. This is what this is about."
yeah,
And even at one point here, let's say too small, but in the upper corner, sorry, here, you can see where Mary is rubbing the face of Christ,
yeah,
Christ's body right there. Again, because Martha was very, very interested in that, and it's very interesting that Barbara would have selected as some of the images for the El Penitente, the work.
yeah.
You can get a sense of what the piece was about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so like narrative and kind of the same thing as you were saying with Martha Graham's own awareness, kind of knowing that people might be familiar with
Yeah.
paintings that,
Right.
if you have a photo and a painting next to each other, they might kind of, draw recollection of, oh, I know, this is whether you've seen it at your own church or, in an art museum kind of thing, having the kind of awareness both of the piece and like art history itself, kind of the canonical images
Yeah.
that are there, which I think is really neat. But yeah, there's, it's such a neat kind of, I don't know, way to look at dance through photography and, kind of being familiar myself with dance and photography as separate practices. It's cool to think about how they translate and
Right.
how you can kind of work with many different mediums and kind of work across them, but how different things that I've learned in dance kind of inform photography and vice versa. And it's cool to see how people have worked with that over time.
Are you, I mean, if this is kind of an aside, but are you currently working with film at all? Are you
Yes,
doing it?
yeah.
You are.
Yeah,
Oh,
film is I'm painfully analog when it comes to photography that I hate my digital camera. I only use it when it's like, for work and
what?
kind of things. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Oh, because there's a kind of resurgence of people going back to film.
Yeah.
I'm those people having an Instagram posts. Some are like they really want to go back to like the SLRs, and
Yeah.
and developing and all like that. I think it's great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
most
amazing.
of the pictures I have when I was in a company were all done on a single lens reflex camera. So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah. No, it's my heart. I actually ran the student darkroom it's
Okay.
in Maine. So that was kind of one of my like passion projects at Vassar. But I don't know. I'm totally biased when I say this, but I think there's some quality in film, and especially in black and white. I prefer black and white most of the time, that gets some level of detail and like emotion
Yeah.
that isn't as easy to get in digital. And whatever you can do, it's fantastic that we have iPhones that you can take pictures and see the results immediately, or digital cameras that have a million megapixels to get detail. But there's some emotion, and I think you can see that in the Barbara Morgan photos, that doesn't necessarily come out as easily in digital, and is so evident in film, and the depth and kind of quality of it.
Well, I mean, it's the black and white. I
Yeah.
think it just is clear. So you look at, uh, I mean, that's just aside from the sweeping fabric. I mean, you can't look at something like this, that
Yeah.
kid, and just the shadows on the dress, and
Yeah,
then
it's incredible.
it's so, and it's so clear, the
Yeah.
clarity of it too. So I again was really grateful to not only see these works here, but also to have seen the dances and see how
Yeah.
clearly Barbara captured the dances, after having performed them and also seen many of them,
Yeah,
my-
for
you know,
sure.
so it just speaks to her genius, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So in the exhibit, what is there a lot of information that's going to be given on Barbara Morgan?
Yeah, so that's what we're kind of working on right now, is the digital portion of things.
Okay.
And these photos have been shown in I forget what the title of the project was, but there was a small exhibit last fall that Miriam actually helped.
That's right. Okay,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah, so they were in that. And I think this is going to be more of a focus on, it's in a category about women and the visibility of labor in photography, and kind of how photography at first was a very historically male dominated kind
Yeah,
of straight photography of
right,
capturing straight fact and truth, and
right.
how kind of at the turn of the century and onward there's kind of been a resurgence of both women photographers and kind of acknowledging the work that women have done in the arts.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
speaking both to Barbara Morgan and Martha Graham in this
okay.
case.
That's
um,
awesome. That's
yeah, which is
awesome.
really cool.
Yeah, it is very cool. Very cool. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. So it'll be cool. And I think it'll live somewhere. We're still working on how it's going to work exactly, but somewhere on the Loeb's website or on our own website, kind of posting the images and then having biographical information, and then having things like we're doing now, where there's kind of various perspectives on photography and, the things, the content of the images as well,
Awesome.
which is very cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's all. I think it's great. Well, again, I have such accolades for these marvelous works, and
Yeah.
I think that anyone who has any kind of savvy in photography will certainly appreciate it. Uh,
Yeah, definitely.
this now, what's also interesting in a couple of these pictures, some of these dances that came into the repertoire during the time I was there, and even afterwards, were reconstructed based upon these pictures and a few and
Yeah.
other photographs, like Deep Song.
That's
That solo, these Deep Song, these images from Deep Song.
uh-huh.
I'm again, I'm not trying to, but uh, all of these graphs, they were put together, and accumulated so they could reconstruct the work. And
Right.
this was kind of the guidance, and they also got a score. And the same thing with the reconstruction of the work, Exasis or Exasis. Here, this one here. I, I don't know if you can see that or not.
Yeah, no, it looks good.
Yeah, but anyway, that work was recently reconstructed in the company and performed at City Center, and I was able to take some Vassar students to City Center to see the performance. Did
Oh,
you
that's so
go?
cool.
No,
I have
you weren't.
no idea.
You weren't around. That's right.
Yeah, I was gonna say it might have been pre my time.
Huh?
Pre my time, I think.
No, 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 no. It was. I think you were on campus because if you were on campus, I would have taken you.
Okay.
So I know. But anyway, long story short, we were able to go to New York and
Right.
actually see the reconstructed work. And again, using all these photographs and
Yeah.
notice that in the center. So it again, what kudos to this work because it's not only it's recorded Martha's ballet so wonderfully and dramatically, but also became one of the resources that we use later
Yeah.
to be able to reconstruct these works for some that had lost the scores, and there
Yeah.
was no film record of it.
Yeah.
And so that was really great to be able to have this, Barbara's work because they were so clear as a
Yeah.
resource to work at.
Yeah, that's kind of amazing, that it becomes the kind of archive that it
Yeah,
makes. I think it's really neat in the book too how there's a list of all of the works that are
yeah,
photographed and who choreographed them, whose music, who were the dancers that are the pictures, that it
yeah,
becomes, not only beautiful artworks but also kind of a reference in and of
yeah,
itself to and it's really amazing that, the Graham repertoire to this day can use that as a reference and kind of
yeah,
rebuild from that.
absolutely. Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.